talk about some of the challenges that you've seen and how do you overcome not only the technical challenges, but some of the internal quote unquote political hurdles that are sometimes that come up when you're trying to, deploy an ITAM solution.
One of the challenges with ITAM is the perception of deploying an ITAM solution into an environment is perceived to be work. It is work. And the benefits to it are ones that you earn over time.
How should they be thinking about ITAM?
There are risks lying around in the organization, and a good ITAM solution is going to be one that's going to help identify that for you, and then essentially be a good foundation for really helping mature up the organization in the IT spectrum.
Hello, and welcome to the Security Strategist podcast, where we tackle real-world cybersecurity challenges and explore practical solutions. I'm Chris Steffen. I'm the Vice President of Security Research at EMA, a boutique analyst firm that covers all things technology and security, and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today, we're focusing on IT asset management and automation, which are essential tools for reducing risk and gaining clear visibility across complex IT environments. Joining me today is Syed Ali, founder and chief executive officer of EZO, a company dedicated to helping organizations secure and manage their IT assets. Ali, great to have you. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about what your company is, if I'm saying it correctly, and we'll start with how did you get into this universe that you're in? Because it's a really kind of a cool story that I think worth sharing with the audience.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. And we go by EZO. The way I got into this was essentially I had the privilege of being in pretty much all roles around the IT department. And there was this challenge that I would always run into. So at an employee level, and then at manager level, and then finally at an executive level, that had to do with IT asset management. And if you want, I can add some more color to that.
Yeah, sure, you should. Very simply because it isn't always that I get to talk to people that started out as the practitioner, acknowledged and realized that there was a problem that was causing the little bit of hair they had on their head to be pulled out. I'm right there with you. And then basically decided to do something about it. And so that's cool. A lot of times you see, entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs doing something over and over again and the next iteration, whatever. That isn't how you went about this. You actually identified a problem that you saw as a practitioner and developed a solution around that to solve that particular problem.
I worked at Sun Microsystems back in the days, and back then it was about 40 to 50,000 employees. And I was leading a performance group there, and I needed access to some servers to run certain benchmarks and that kind of stuff. And I reached out to another group, and I said, hey, would be nice if I could get some nice Sunblade servers. Now, these are expensive servers. And the gentleman was kind enough to just lend two of those servers to me. These were Sun property. And so after I'm done using them and it's time for me to move on, I'm like, all right. I call the person up. The phone's it's not picking up. I send an email. The email bounces. I then attempt to reach out to their manager, and they're not at Sun either. And then I reach out to my manager, and I'm like, I'm leaving. Here are these two servers. They're pretty expensive. And what do I do? And my manager goes, well, you didn't go through me to get them. So don't just hang them on me now. And I'm like, well, okay, I leave them in the office. And he's like, no, you just can't leave property out, unknown stuff in the office. So no, don't leave them in the office. And so that was one of those weird moments for me. And I'm like, okay. So, and then when I move on to the next company, and, I'm a manager there, the dev team I'm managing, the biggest concern there was onboarding. When one employee would leave and we'd hire another one, it would take an employee approximately a month just to set up their machine. And back then, we didn't have the fancy VM tools that we have now in dev, but so they'd set up their machine, they'd get this clean imaged machine from IT, which would take a week or two. And once they had the machine, it'll take them time to set it up. And as a manager with tight deadlines, I was like, there's got to be a faster way. And I did stuff that IT folks don't like, which is like, let me improvise. And so when someone's leaving, I just take their laptop and go, you know what? I got this. The new employee comes in. I'm like, here's the laptop of the previous guy. They set the whole thing up for you. So just go in and we delete the personal stuff, if there were any, and they'd be up and running in a few days. And I was patting myself on the back and like, oh, I really aced this. And then the time came for me to move on to the next challenge. And when I'm leaving, IT comes back and goes, not so fast. You still owe us another laptop. I'm like, no, I don't. I gave you the laptop I had. I don't owe you anything. And they're like, nope, our records show you have that. And so I knew the IT director, who was my peer, and I'm like, just give me a solid air. So give me this favor. And he kind of made things happen. And so anyway, I got out. A few years later, I meet this IT director and he's like, do you remember that favor you asked me? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, a year later, an employee resigned and he was leaving, and he handed us two laptops. One of them was that laptop that we had assigned to you. So whatever optimization and whatever stuff you were doing, we finally figured out what had happened. It was with some other employee. You never really had it. And, so I was like, okay, glad. But the lesson I learned there was essentially, you shouldn't be short circuiting processes just because they're not working. You really do need to work with the IT team there. And then when I became an executive and I had the IT department reporting into me, the challenge was, well, what do we procure? When do we procure it? And anytime I'd ask for that information to essentially make data informed decisions, the IT manager would disappear. I'd walk by their cubicle. I'd never find them there. And they were essentially hiding from me because they were out in the field trying to get all that inventory up to date. And when I'd get that information as well, the confidence level would generally not be as high because all you need is really one data point to be off for that confidence to completely shatter. And that is such a common issue out there. So that when it was my time to get into entrepreneurship, I was like, this problem has my name written on it. And that's how I got started.
No, that's awesome. I mean, again, you could have ended up with an entire Sun server farm at your house, and we could have gone there and played together, and nobody would have ever found out. And that's interesting because I've had the same experiences in various roles that I've been in too, where they're concerned about the fact that you're taking a stapler with the multi-million-dollar computer monitor setup, so on and so forth. No, that was all expendable. And that's bizarre to me in this day and age, but it really is the case. So I'm glad that you're looking into it. I know that part of the problem that we have today is that there is a kind of a need to circumvent some of the roles and some of the rules that you have within IT asset management. And when you start talking about agentic AI, talk to me a little bit about why a deterministic and controlled approach is considered important for IT management, especially when you're talking about the non-deterministic view of agentic AI.
I look at deterministic control as really the start of automation, and perhaps I think it's not far-fetched to kind of claim that IT kind of came up with automation. The IT admin folks I'd interacted with back in the days when I started off my career, those folks all had those Bash and Perl scripts that they'd have, that they'd use for anything that was needed of them. They'd even have those permission bits that set on those files to make all that fancy thing happen. And so automation, something that really runs in IT, has always run in it. And what we at Asset Sonar, EZO Asset Sonar, have tried to do is really level it up so that it's got the observability, the logging, and we take this to the level where it's owned by the organization so that there's continuity rather than those scripts, which would then get passed over and trying to debug a Perl script for those who've tried isn't the easiest thing. So with systems like ours in asset management with automation in it, the continuity is far more robust, and you get a bunch of other things. Now, agentic AI is a big one, right? And we're trying to domesticate this wild beast, and we look at agentic AI and automation as two different branches that we're not merging into one. So we look at them separately, and the challenge with agentic AI is really latency, reliability, and the non-deterministic aspect of it. And one solution to that has been human oversight or human in the middle approach. But the challenge is for that the way I see it is you give such a solution to a human in the middle and then a really good IT admin, they'd probably come up with some sort of script in the browser to auto click the yes, acknowledge, and move on once they start seeing it enough. And when the non-determinism does hit, bad things will happen. So it really is the way we've approached it is we want to work with agentic AI, domesticate it for our customers, and use them in different proof of concepts that we then give to our customers and let them determine the gradient of risk that they're willing to take on and how much they want to do it. And I see this technology maturing really fast and for us to keep a close eye on, but not something that should be deployed out there, at least for large enterprises, without significant guardrails around it. And just something that just popped up in my mind was just recently I was on a sales call, and one of our buyers was really interested in knowing about the agentic AI, and I pinged our AE who's doing the demo, and I'm like, show them that POC that we have, and he slacks back going, it's hallucinating like crazy today for some reason. And turns out our dev team had upgraded the model or something along those lines. And it really is a beast that's still in the process of being domesticated. And so we put all these guardrails around it. So, and one just needs to have a close eye on it. It's a promising future, but it's not here today.
And one of my biggest concerns is that when you talk about ITAM in general, is that a lot of times it's reactionary, right? You're deploying it after you've had an issue because somebody told you that you need to deploy this and it'll solve, all your problems and world hunger and everything else. But that's almost the worst time to be doing it, right? Let's talk about what it takes to effectively implement ITAM correctly. Talk about some of the challenges that you've seen and how do you overcome not only the technical challenges, but some of the internal quote unquote political hurdles that are sometimes that come up when you're trying to deploy an ITAM solution.
IT departments are challenged with two things from what I've observed. One is they're understaffed, and second is prioritization. And so the understaffed part is IT departments generally get their employee headcounts trailing from the rest of the organization. So as an organization is growing, they're feeding the sales, marketing, product, etc., and IT is on the tail end of it. And then because of that, they're essentially running around trying to make the best of the situation, and it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And that's one of the challenges with ITAM is the perception of deploying an ITAM solution into an environment is perceived to be work. It is work. And the benefits to it are ones that you earn over time. And the risk radius significantly decreases, but it requires a lot of foresight to see that before it happens. And so with what we've tried to do with our solution is with Asset Owners is just try to ensure that we focus on automation so that and the integration so that the information is all pulled in without too much work being put in. And then from then on, the automations kind of help make work look easy and reduce that workload. So you shouldn't have to work on the system. The system should be really working for you. And so, but that does require discipline and identifying that the risk is very real when it comes to not having a good ITAM. But I do understand that, an understaffed IT department running around isn't really going to be able to identify these risks in the best priority possible. And unfortunately, it is what it is.
I don't think that any IT environment is static. I mean, even when you had the four-wall environment, you had incremental changes and whatever have you. Now it's almost the wild, wild west, right? I mean, I'm working remotely. You're working remotely. Everybody else is. You're working out of coffee shops. You're taking and adding this. You're adding that. I'm taking and upgrading my computers. I'm doing these things, so on and so forth. And so this idea of having a static environment where you could take in and take a snapshot of an environment and boom, have all your assets immediately cataloged and so on and so forth, that's just not realistic. So you do need to concentrate on your process, and you need to concentrate on your automation to make certain that these tools are doing the things that you want them to. If they can't do that, then maybe it's time to look at a different tool, because you're going to spend so much brain damage taking and trying to get a handle on your changes that you're not going to be able to prioritize anything else. One of the other things that I see too in the grand scheme, when you start talking about ITAM tools, but this security tools in general, there's this whole idea of either having a specialized tool or a platform to take and solve a particular need. Talk to me about how does organizational maturity influence a company's readiness for more advanced tooling, right? So sometimes that one throat to choke is the way to go, but it doesn't really meet all your needs. Whereas a more advanced tool requires maturity that an organization may not have.
Do organizations want to go for a jack of all, or do they want to pick the gold standards and then put in the effort of trying to integrate them, etc.? So there is more work associated with having solutions that provide more insights that are needed for better maturity and all. Now, the way I see more mature organizations working is how they look at data and accuracy of data. And the second part is how they look at impact radiuses for risk. So they want those impact radiuses to be as small as possible, and they're always on the lookout for those mines, so that they're identifying them and reducing those radiuses. And for these two to really happen, one has to understand what they're getting themselves into when they go and get a solution. What's the outcome that they're after? And as organizations mature, they're able to understand how these best of breed solutions help with these 2 points, so that they're actually achieving the outcome rather than checking off these check boxes and perhaps getting a certification or some sort of compliance, which is good on paper, but won't really help mitigate those big risks out there.
I totally agree. And taking and buying tools, I mean, I've seen this happen so many times in my career. Organizations that will buy tools because an auditor says you need to buy this tool in order to be compliant. That's great. But then you're literally taking and trying to be compliant. You're not trying to necessarily improve your overall cybersecurity. So again, that really, really good advice there. One last question for you that I had is that talk to me about the future of ITAM. Talk to me about how ITAM is going to look in the future. What trends should organizations be preparing in ITAM to stay ahead in their cybersecurity journey?
First one is going to be that agentic thing, but keeping it under policy guardrails and all, and just having working with vendors that are involved in it, and they're keeping a close eye and deploying those POCs. Second is probably going to be identity aware ITAMs. It's somewhat related to agentic as well. We're seeing agents get into the system, whether perhaps even shadow agents are going to start getting in, where certain employees kind of just integrate multiple systems and kind of let them loose without informing IT. And so identity is key. And so identity aware ITAMs solutions is something that I do see as a future need, and one we're working on. And the third one perhaps has to do with something that I've seen our vendors and our partners do to us, is the pricing models moving a lot towards usage based, and it's really another way for vendors to increase their revenue and
they
perhaps
want
growth
the money.
or so.
They want all the money. You got it.
Right. So just SaaS consumption spend control. I think that is key. Where we, as an ITAM solution, we want to ensure that our our customers don't get surprise bills. And so we are on top of it for them.
Very cool. No, I appreciate that. Then I guess my very, very last question is that if you had a key takeaway from the discussion today that a CISO should be thinking about, what is that key takeaway? How should they be thinking about ITAM? How should they be thinking about their spend here in the next, fiscal year? Talk to me a little bit about that, and we'll wrap things up.
Sure thing. So I think it just goes to the vulnerabilities out there that ITAM solutions help to point a flashlight at. And so unmanaged assets, unknown identities, shadow SaaS are all real threats where you don't want data to be leaked through any of those, or a threat to be in your environment and you to find out a bit too late. And the way I look at this is, in the past, these fundamentals were essentially where you once hadn't really kind of gone through the fundamentals, was like finding a needle in the haystack from a attacker perspective or an adversary perspective, where a hacker would essentially try to find that needle in a haystack. Now, with LLMs being used actively, them finding that one thing that hasn't been configured right, one identity that is using a system that it shouldn't, trying to find that has become far more easier and faster for these attackers, because now they're using LLM. And so what a good ITAM solution is going to do is going to help you identify that faster and then take it out. And a good example, a recent one, is the Louvre Museum, where all their CCTVs were connected to the system, and the password to it was, any guess?
Password, probably.
No, well, they did better than that, but it's still easy. It was Louvre. Louvre Museums was Louvre. and so, yeah, no 2FA, nothing to that effect, just simple Louvre. So anyhow, that's the big takeaway, that there are risks lying around in the organization, and a good ITAM solution is going to be one that's going to help identify that for you, and then essentially be a good foundation for really helping mature up the organization in the IT spectrum.
No, that's awesome. Well, again, I really appreciate your insights today. Absolutely great conversation, Ali. I thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to everybody listening. I hope that you took a lot from this episode. If you'd like any information about what we talked about today, please head over to EZO.io. A lot of great information there. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. Until then, make certain you subscribe to this podcast on all your major platforms and follow the conversation on our socials, EM360 Tech on X, Twitter, whatever they call themselves, and in LinkedIn. And for more great daily content, head over to em360tech.com.